morning, everybody. Welcome to Grace. Glad you could join us this morning here online. Hope you're having a wonderful day. A few announcements before we get to the Word this morning. First is that we are doing a food drive December 11th, so not tonight, but next Sunday night from 4 to 5. We're meeting here at the church. We'll be walking, caroling through the community, just in and around the church. And we have let them know that we are going to be collecting food donations as we carol. And so we'd love to invite you out to that, to come, go for a nice walk, meet some neighbors, and do something good for the food bank. So we want to do that and invite you out to join us. Second is that we are hosting a community dinner December 30th. So that is the last Friday of the month. And we're doing it here. We're hoping to do a turkey dinner. So if you'd like to come, be a part of the prep work, it'll be happening the afternoon of the 30th into the evening. And you'd like to serve or just be a part, we'd love firstly to invite you, but also if you would like to help, you can contact Kent, or you can email info@iGrace, and we can connect you with the people who are setting that up. And then lastly, this morning, we are having a guest speaker live. Regan is speaking to us. He works with New Ventures. So you can listen to that later today online on the podcast or on the website. But here on YouTube, we're going to be doing a rebroadcast of a sermon from last year because what we're going to be doing in the new year is looking again at these themes of slow, small, and simple. And so this is a rebroadcast from the beginning of 2022, and this sermon is called Slow. Well, I want to open this morning by reading you one verse, and we are starting a new series called Focus, and we'll be working through that for 3 weeks. And so I want to just invite you to think about this verse. And so I think it's fitting. We're talking about focus, and we are going to literally read one verse this morning, and that will be kind of a kickoff for our meditation. And so the verse is found in Romans 12, verse 2, and it says this: "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." Well, have you ever been at a failed surprise party where the person who comes in tries to act surprised, but everyone knows almost immediately they knew it was coming? I was at a surprise party like that a few years ago, my dad's birthday, and we didn't think that he knew anything about this. The whole family had come, and by whole family, I mean everybody, brothers, sisters, wives, grandchildren, except my brother Dave, who was halfway around the world in Korea teaching English. And so it felt perfect. He's coming back from an errand, and we had all gathered at the house. My sister had made a cake. The burgers were ready for the barbecue. There were snacks and food ready. And we were and all of this stuff was just out of sight of the front door. And it was really fun. We were all excited. I remember trying to quiet down the kids who were just bubbling with excitement. It's their first surprise party. And so I remember just being with them, just quieting them down and just being totally focused on that front door. Finally, the moment arrives. He's pulled in the driveway. They're walking up the steps. They open the door, and he comes in with my mom, and we wait just a moment and then yell, "Surprise!" But you could see it. He had this sort of faked, funny look of shock on his face. I know right away he's trying his best to look surprised, but I knew we didn't get him. Somehow he must have known. I don't know how. The kids that are there, are all our kids, they don't pick up on it though. This is their first one. They don't know what a bad fake smile looks like yet. And so we all sort of play along. There's my dad trying his best to keep up his shocked face, over raising his eyebrows with a weird kind of plastic smile. And it was in that moment of failure, as I'm staring at my dad, and I'm wondering, how did he figure it out? That suddenly, to everyone's complete shock, my brother Dave, who's supposed to be halfway around the world in Korea, suddenly bursts in from the side door and surprises everyone. We had been set up. This is a picture of that exact moment that he burst through the door. And I did not see it coming. None of us there did. You can see by our faces. I honestly do not think I have been more surprised in my entire life. There I was, in one moment, completely focused on the front door, only to discover that something much better, something unexpected, was breaking in from a place that I had not anticipated. Now, I tell you that because I want to ask if you've ever had an experience like that with God, where God surprises you by doing something completely unexpected, where you're totally focused over here, and then God breaks in through a side door like a long-lost brother from Korea. He leads you in a direction that you didn't think makes sense. How many times has that happened? God takes you in a place, in a direction you didn't imagine. He provides for you in a way that you could never have foreseen. Or the most confusing, you watch as someone else gets the breakthrough that you were longing for in a way or from a place that you had ruled out or overlooked as a source. You're like, I've been pursuing that, and there it happens for you? How did you do it? And if that's true, if you've had an experience like that, and I think we all have, you're in good company because the Bible is chock full of moments exactly like that. Just for a moment, imagine with me about the look on the face of the servants at the wedding in Cana, where they've just brought what they thought was water to the master of ceremony. They filled up this jug that's used for washing. They bring it to him, and they're sure it's water because they literally just poured water into the jug. But Jesus told them to take it for some reason to the master of ceremonies because he needs wine. And so they bring the MC, they scoop out a cup, and they're bringing it up, and to their surprise, upon tasting what they know is water, the MC stands up in front of the whole wedding and makes this declaration. He says, everyone serves the good wine first, but you, he's looking at the groom, and he's saying, you served it last. You saved the best until last. And they're probably looking at each other as he's saying that, like thinking, has he lost his mind? And probably one of them turns and samples it himself, takes a sip, and in that moment, they probably look just like we did at that picture. They're probably looking at, trying to find Jesus being like, how did you do that? I never thought that was coming. Or think about the disciples. They're on that hill after Jesus is preaching. They're trying to give away this loaf that isn't enough, only to have it multiply in their hands. They're giving it away, and as they're doing it, somehow it's full again, and they're just breaking it off, and it keeps multiplying. Or you think about the wonder and awe that Gideon must have felt as he watched his lowly army of 300 people confound and overwhelm 300,000 of the enemy. They must have felt invincible as they pursued the enemy as they fled before them. You know, they're singing, who can stop the Lord Almighty, right? Completely beyond what anything they could have ever asked or imagined. And what I want us to realize is that that kind of behavior isn't unusual for God. Instead, the more that you read, the more that you meditate on that, you realize that this is actually, this surprise, this unexpectedness is a main feature of how God has continually chosen to operate in our lives. And the reason is because he's trying to demonstrate to us and in us and through our lives that he is not and will not be limited by anything. He's not handcuffed by the situations that seem to overwhelm us. In fact, you might say that God seems to prefer impossibilities so that there would be no confusion about who is at work in our lives. So this morning, if you have an impossibility, it is the stage upon which God makes his greatest performances. So I want you to listen about how Paul talks about the way that Jesus chose to operate in his work of saving and redeeming and sanctifying us. And in 1 Corinthians 1:27, he says, but God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in this world, even things that are not, as in they don't exist, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God. Did you catch that? The way it says we are transformed by God, the way we are being asked to partner with God's work in our lives is by being obedient to God's ways. Specifically, and most importantly, when we do not understand them. Jesus didn't say to his disciples that they needed to somehow guess or predict or even fully understand where he was going. But he did say that they needed to follow him. And it didn't matter if that meant following him to the wedding feast where the wine never ends, or to the cross where the end is at hand. The heart of true wisdom for a disciple, for every disciple, the heart of wisdom in your life is bound up not in just having some right information about God that you can predict what he's like, but about having right relationship, a connection, and your eyes focused on God. Now, just over 3 years ago, I had one of those exact kind of experiences with God, where God completely surprised me and gave me something unexpected, something foolish. It was at a small leaders weekend away. I remember as I was listening to the speaker sharing, it was in that moment that God dropped these 3 distinct and surprising words into my mind. And those words have transformed the focus of my entire life. And I know it sounds sort of grandiose that these 3 words have changed the focus of my life, but they have. I'm not exaggerating. These 3 words have changed and shaped my life in ways that are hard to imagine. Now, I haven't really shared these words specifically. I've probably referenced them. They're probably in my thoughts and words. But really, I've just let them, for 3 years, just live in my heart. I've been, they've just been turning them over. And I've been feeling since the fall that maybe I should share them with you as we start this year, because I think having let them shape me for 3 years, I feel convinced that they're actually really vital paradigms. They're not secrets, they're just ways to think. And they're helpful for anyone that wants to try and keep their eyes on Jesus. If you want to make sure that you're looking at the right door. And really my prayer in giving and kind of presenting these to you is that they help transform your focus as you head into this new year. I hope that maybe they would become maybe a lens through which you think about your year and your future. So when I say God gave me 3 words, I mean 3 singular words, like 3 singular words. And they're not really religious words per se, like redemption or faith or healing. They're just really 3 ordinary words that they sort of just broke into my mind all at once. And I didn't have to think my way into them. I didn't have to ponder them. I just remember looking at them. They were like a ticker tape running across my mind's eye. And I found the note this week in my phone from the moment when I first wrote them down, November 23rd, 2018, the Relearning Conference. And the 3 words that God gave me that day were slow, small, and simple. Slow, small, simple. Almost like a refrain, they've just been on repeat, kind of in the background of my mind, counseling me. Slow, small, simple. They're not seemingly strong words, particularly dangerous at first. Slow, small, simple. It's sort of the antithesis of that. But as I turned them over in my heart, as I meditated on those words, I grasped pretty quickly that these words were like God's counter-argument to all of the wisdom of the world. God's counter-argument to the wisdom of the world. These were at the heart of the foolishness, the weakness, the lowly kinds of things that God absolutely loves to use for his purposes. It would be just like God to whisper slow, small, simple. Totally unassuming. Now, it's probably not hard for most of us to see that our world, or to note, we could maybe make this assumption or make this declaration or this conclusion, that our world is hopelessly addicted to hurry. It's true, right? We never slow down. We don't know how to. If you ask someone how they're doing, they say they're good, but they're just busy. Just busy. I'm just busy. I'm okay. I'm just busy. We're distracted, stressed out, and this is the truth, and constantly behind. Never ahead. We're always rushing forward, always trying to catch up. And it's apparent to me, not only are we addicted to hurry, but that our culture is also captivated by it's enslaved to personal achievement and the need for power or the search for power. See, we despise not just slow things, but small things. Bigger is always better because we're trying to prove we're worthy and we're trying to justify ourselves and to others. And if then, God forbid, that something actually is small in our lives, we think then it better have big value. It better be worth something. But then not only are we addicted to hurry and personal achievement and power, I think we're plagued by the real virus that's out there, which is not COVID, but never feeling like we have enough. Never feeling like we are enough. Never being satisfied or at rest. In that kind of world, simple things are never, ever enough. And if you can see that picture of the world is real, that's actually underlying, that's pulsating, that's what everybody's pushing after. If you can see that, what I want us to consider is how deeply we might have been influenced in our lives, in our minds, in our hearts, from living inside that kind of sick culture, that broken culture. How deeply we might be discipled by its core values. How deeply it's affecting the way that you think about the world, you think about yourself, and most importantly, how you think about God. And it's insidious. If you can't see that at work in your life, or you're not pushing back against it, it's because you're blind to what's actually happening in your heart. And then what I want you to consider then is the kind of thoughts that we would need to hold on to, that we would need to assert in order to resist that. What kind of things do we need to think about to resist that kind of thinking so that we're not conformed by its immense pressure because it's all around us? What kind of truth do we need to believe and understand and meditate on so that we can break these lies? What kind of things do we need to see and believe so that we can find that freedom, so we aren't conformed? And you can see that. You can see it at work all around us. I can see it in the conversations I have. I can see it on social media. I can see it as we talk about the way things are going in this world, and it's in the church too. There's division and confusion and fear. The presence and the confinement that comes as we are shaken and influenced by the world. And my prayer for us is this, is that regardless, and this is more of a pointed comment just to make it for you to know, that regardless of where you stand politically, I want to just comment on this for a moment. Regardless of wherever you are politically, that you guard yourself from being poisoned by the political spirit of this age that is seeking to divide and conquer people, to alienate and to blame. Because the political spirit of this age doesn't care what side you're on. There is no winning side, because neither side wins when you let it separate you from loving others or thinking of them thinking of yourself better than others. No one wins when you give in to that. And that is the spirit of the age, not the Spirit of God. Now, if you find yourself, like I have, tempted to entertain that kind of thinking, where you look at someone and you think less of them, or you're judging them, or you're afraid of them, or you're suspicious of them, you have to resist that with the truth. Because that is the work of the enemy, and it is demonic. So let me ask you, and this is an aside, we're going to get back in a moment, but are you living free of bitterness today in your heart towards others, towards the government, towards the situations that are happening in your life? Are you not consumed by anger? And are you in love with your neighbors, serving them? Or are you more suspicious today than you were yesterday about others? Do you find that yourself more tribalized in your alliances, in your friendships, more offended, more closed, more anxious, more upset? And so, that's a question. And so when I heard God speak those three things to me 3 years ago, I knew then that they were going to be formational words for my life, words that I would be invited to apply and reapply in each season. And I know, and I believe this, that they're divine weapons for a spiritual battle. Now I want to consider, we'll break in, I want to consider the importance of the first word this week, and we'll look at the next two over the next 2 weeks. But I want to start with slow, and I want to briefly look this morning at why, at one of the glaring signs that reveals how much hurry is a problem for us. Exhibit A, speed walking.
So the best part of 4 hours ahead of these men. On the extreme left alongside there was the Irishman Robert Heffernan, the world champion at this distance, going back to 2013 in Moscow. And I would say that the conditions here very similar indeed to those experienced by the walkers in Moscow.
We must all take responsibility. For while we can celebrate the many cultural achievements that have happened in our lifetime, from electricity to internet to women's rights to the abolition of slavery, we also are responsible for the sport, unfortunately, of race walking. We have to take responsibility. And is it not a paradox? Race walking, speed walking, it's an Olympic sport. And not only does it look absolutely ridiculous, but I think as a culture that race walking should be whenever it happens. If you see someone out in the street race walking, it should be accompanied by one of those kind of blaring submarine alarms. You know, something is terribly wrong here. There is something broken. Speed walking is us more or less admitting that we as a culture cannot do anything slowly. We can't even walk slowly. The technique itself is telling. It's a fitting picture, I think, of how we look as we rush around stressed and overwhelmed in our life. You know, to do it properly, you have to keep one foot on the ground at all times. And then to do that, you have to then straighten your leg and over-exaggerate your hip movement, which, if you're wondering what that looks like to everyone else, it's embarrassing. That's what we look like when we give in to hurry. Now, I know I'm joking a little bit about, but the signs of hurry are everywhere around us. We're all plagued, each of us, by, I think it's true, of busyness and hurry. And the reason is time, on one level, is time is money, and we never have enough money, and therefore there's never enough time. And then because there's never enough time and we're always short, we have to buy the latest technology. Why? Because we assume that this one will be the one that will save us time. Think of the time you will save is basically or literally every marketing department's golden goose. Someone looks at something and says, I don't really need that. I should hold off. But then someone comes along and says, but think about the time that you'll save. Sold. We pack our schedules full months in advance just so we can fit all the things that we're to do in. But then we're never really free, and then we're surprised when we feel exhausted and we can't do what we want. I always have to laugh cynically when I'm talking to a new married couple or I'm hearing them, without kids talk about how the effort it takes to make time for the relationship and being intentional about spending time together. And I'm thinking in my mind, you literally will never have more free time in your entire life until you retire. But when I think about it, it doesn't feel that way to them for some reason. They have no idea. John Mark Comer is a pastor, and he said that the problem isn't when you have a lot to do. It's when you have too much to do, and the only way to keep up the quota is to hurry. And the net effect is that we become, in our lives, and have become, preoccupied, distracted, and rarely present anywhere, ever. We're never really there. And we're so busy, we're completely blind to the pace that we're living at. We're not aware that it's a problem because our culture is addicted to it. It doesn't tell you to slow down. And, our culture may say, listen, it's good. Hey, it's good for you to slow down a bit. Take a break on the weekend. As long as it's by Monday, you're ready to come back and put the pedal right to the metal. And maybe as I'm saying that, you're thinking, you know what? It's not a big problem for me. I'm okay with being a bit busy. I understand. I've got some busy seasons. Maybe I'm having a busy year. Maybe it's been a busy 2 years. It's been a busy 5 years. It's been a busy decade. And you're thinking, it's not a big problem for you though. No, it's just a busy decade. And that's why it's so misleading, because it feels busyness and hurry and preoccupation, distractedness, they don't feel like scary issues. I mean, hey, listen, I've got other things that are more important to deal with. They feel benign. It's inconvenient, but it's not really a big thing to worry about. And I think part of it is it doesn't, hurry and rushing and distractedness doesn't have a scary name like adultery or busyness or bitterness or lust. It's not a sinless thing. And that's true until you realize that the first word that is used to describe love in Corinthians 13 is that love is patient. Love is patient. Literally meaning that the speed of love is slow and steady. If you want to move at the speed of love, you can't go fast. It's the opposite. And what does it mean? Love is patient or slow. Slow to what? Well, it tells us slow to complaining, slow to anger, love is slow to irritation, love is slow to resentment and bitterness. All of those things are symptoms of hurry. I'll read them again. What happens when we hurry? Complaining. What happens when we're in a rush? We get angry. What happens when we can't slow down? We're irritated by everything that's holding us back. What happens when we're moving so fast and the world is spinning? We get resentful of the people that are experiencing rest, and we get bitter towards anything that stands in our way. And that's a blight in our life. That's a plague in our life. Love, though, is slow enough, it says, that it can bear all things. Love is wide and vast. And it says, not only can it bear it, it can endure it. It comes out the other side. See, love is just not in a rush. You want to love someone, you can't be in a rush. And Jesus was a lot of things, but he was never in a hurry. Never in a hurry to get anywhere. Never in a hurry to make something more than it was. Jesus lived slowly. And that's why hurry, when it lives unchallenged or overlooked in our lives, is so dangerous. It's so dangerous because it's this vile concoction of impatience that's born out of our fears, and then it's driven by our pride. Now, does that make you feel concerned that that's what's actually happening? Imagine prioritizing the speed of love, prioritizing speed in the work of loving God or others. Imagine trying to say, I'm going to go have my devotion so I can deeply love God and spend time with Him and enjoy Him, but I'm going to do it fast. Right? I'm going to go on a 5-minute date. Said no one ever. How can we love and care for our neighbors if at the end of the day we're just too busy? They're completely at odds. Missionary Corrie ten Boom said, if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy, and that's the same thing. Psychologist Carl Jung said, hurry is not of the devil, hurry is the devil. And when renowned theologian Dallas Willard was asked about what someone should do to become the person that God had made them to be fully alive, he said, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. So that's a problem. So how then do we, if it's a problem, it's something, God, you might be calling me to look at in my life. How do you resist hurry and the impatience that we have in our hearts? How do we push back? If the world is wanting to conform us, how do we push back? Well, Romans 12:2 that we read, that one verse that I want us to really focus in on, is which we read at the beginning, tells us, it says, do not be conformed any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that tells us 3 things, at least, that we need to know in order to resist, in order to push back. And this applies really for anything you're pushing back. But listen, it tells us 3 things. The first is that everyone is being formed. You are being formed. And that could be by being firstly conformed to this world or transformed by God. It's one or the other. You're being conformed to the world or transformed by God. The word conformed means molded, like squished, put in a box, pressed together. Whereas transformed means to be changed into something completely different. Like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. It's a transformation, a metamorphosis. So I want you to realize your thoughts literally are shaping your reality even as I speak. You're either allowing, the thoughts that you have in your mind are either conforming you, confining you, imprisoning you, or they are releasing you into the freedom of God. You are right where your thoughts have led you. Second thing is it frames that as a command to us. And so it says, do not be conformed, which means you are not a victim in the things that you think, but that there is a choice to make. And that we have the freedom to choose the thoughts we think, regardless of whether you realize that or not. You are thinking freely what you want. And then thirdly, it tells us that those renewed kind of thoughts, right? Those thoughts that are from God are powerful. And if we allow them, they will transform our lives. So maybe you're here, you're listening this morning, and you're thinking to yourself, I hear what you're saying. I agree with the Bible. I think Romans is right. But I still haven't seen that transformation yet in my life. I know that that's true, but I haven't seen it happen. Or you're here and you're listening and you're recognizing that you feel stuck in some way, in some pattern of this world. You're frustrated because you can't break it, you can't beat it, you can't get past it. You feel defeated about it, you feel frustrated, you're disappointed because you know you should be further along. And what I would say to you is let the Scripture counsel you. And this is what I think it's saying. Do not lose heart this morning. Do not lose heart in this struggle. Do not lose heart. Do not give up. What is happening is simply that you have not yet thought, you have not yet conceived what God is thinking about your problem. And God has a beautiful thought about your problem. And if you understand that you have yet to perceive what God has. That brings us full circle, doesn't it? Right back to where we began. Back to that failed surprise party. Staring at the wrong door, totally focused, sure that that is the place and the way in which God is working. That's how I'm going to get breakthrough. But what I want us to ask this morning is, if you aren't getting breakthrough, if you aren't seeing God transform you, what if that was the problem? And what if you were suddenly open to a totally different kind of possibility? What if it's not going to happen the way you thought? What if there's a totally different thought that you haven't yet understood? What if the problem that God was addressing in that moment or that place in your life wasn't actually about the outward situation that you thought it was, but actually about the limitations and the fears that have lived unchecked inside of you? What if God's trying to refine you and this problem is just the opportunity to address it? What if God in His grace was doing something better than what you have yet conceived of? What if God was using the confounding problem that looks impossible to you, it literally looks impossible, in order to reveal to you His brilliance? Don't lose heart. What if God uses what's slow in this world, the processes of life, in a slow way to confuse and confound those of us who are so busy and so caught up to address the fact that we have lived hurried and ahead of God rather than independence and surrender? Why is it that we are so surprised that the God who does exceedingly more than we could ever ask or imagine goes about it in ways that we would never have asked or imagined? So what thought does God have for us? I'm believing this morning that God wants to give us new thoughts, new considerations, new possibilities. And the risk I'm taking this morning is that I don't want to suggest any more to you really than what God spoke to you. I don't want to try and forecast into your world and your life, because God didn't tell me to slow down particularly. He didn't even tell me that I had a problem with hurrying. I didn't know that that was going to be an issue in my life. He simply said to me 3 years ago, take this word slow, consider it. Just let it be a thought in your mind. Put it like an anchor in your heart. Just let it be there. Because right now it feels like utter foolishness. I want to go fast. I want to break through. And God says, slow. It's foolishness to the world. It's foolishness to me. And God said, let that word be counsel for you when you get running ahead. Slow down. Whoa. Let it be encouragement for you, Mike, when you're feeling like you can't see the way forward. How is this all going to work? How is this all going to work? Slow. I'm leading you. I have you. Just go slow. Let it be a blessing for you as you reap its many rewards. Think about that. When you slow down, when you let that be in your heart as a command, when you let that form your thoughts, it's good to go slow. You enter into love. And what do we gain by love? Everything. What do we see through love? The truth. For the spiritual speed of love might be slow, but it has never lost the race. So let's pray. God, this morning I know that you, Lord, you want to give us new thoughts. You want to lead us in a breakthrough. And we can make it complicated. We can try and take charge of this year. We can set our goals. But Lord, I just sense, Lord, that there's just something slow that you want us to consider. That you want us to realize that the pace of this life has just been so frenetic. and that it's all right just to walk slowly beside you, that you're not rushing ahead, that you're right with us, Lord. You're walking at our pace. You're not frustrated or angry. You're gracious and kind. So I pray, Lord, whatever this word can be for us, Lord, whatever caution or blessing or encouragement or wisdom that it is, I pray, Lord, that it would just be imparted in our hearts. We walk slowly at the speed of love, honoring you, Lord. I pray, Lord, your kingdom come in our lives in ways we never expected. We welcome your surprises, Lord. In your name, Jesus. Amen.